All right, Ike. Well, Ike, this week we have a pretty great show. We have a group of individuals. Jeremy Hart, our very good friend of the show, and Anthony
Wonderful
and Toby, new friends of the show, and we're going to talk about the journey of discovery, which is, contrary to popular belief, not a trip taken with the band Journey in a discovery, but in fact a European, sort of Euro-Asian journey from the factory, ultimately to China, to the Beijing Motor Show. But one
factory
of the
expedition celebrating the millionth discovery, if I recall, and this is the 10-year anniversary. And I think what we're going to talk about the most today is their time in the Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, this is an incredibly challenging time for the country and for the people of Ukraine, and we obviously stand in support of them. And wanted to spend some time talking about the country in peacetime, so that we all hopefully understand the value of the country and of those people, and the need for us to support them. So without further ado, we'll rev up ye old interview machine here, and we'll get Jeremy and the gang, Jeremy and Anthony and Toby, on the show.
I'm really excited about this. Let's go.
All right. Well, we are joined for a very, very special conversation about an event, an expedition, if you will, that took place about 10 years ago. In fact, like 10 years ago right now, to the day almost. And we're joined again by our very good friend, Jeremy Hart, and friend of the show, and genuinely nice guy and all-around adventurer, and by Anthony Cullen and Toby Blythe for this very special conversation about the journey of discovery, which took you guys 10 years. Didn't take you 10 years, took you 10 years ago through a good portion of Europe on your journey from the factory to a couple of motor shows. And part of that, in fact, the part that took place this week, took place in the Ukraine. And so we thought we would take a moment to given the conflict going on there now, to talk about the country, to talk about the people in a time of peace, and hope that we soon see that again. So, folks, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. And Jeremy, if maybe you could just speak quickly on your role in that particular expedition, as you know, we're all very familiar with your legendary body of work. So.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be back on the show. I was approached by Land Rover to come up with a framework and lead the expedition from Solihull. We had an amazing array of people to kick it all off, and then lead it all the way across Europe into Asia and finishing in China. So I guess I was, expedition leader, whatever you want to call it, but. I got the nicest bottle of wine at some point from a vineyard we went to, so they must have thought I carried some weight.
and Anthony, how did you end up in this motley crew trekking across Europe and Asia?
Yeah, so I've sort of worked with Jeremy on quite a few projects before, and was part of the crew. So. I was going to be I was the expedition photographer, part way anyway. So I did from Geneva to Kazakhstan. I think that was to Kazakhstan, and then another favourite of yours and your show, Nick Dimbleby, did Kazakhstan all the way to Beijing. So we sort of tag team the photography on that. So I obviously got to do all of the lovely European bits, and then through Ukraine and then down to Kazakhstan. So I was sort of shooting content on the road and then shooting it back to Land Rover of an evening, and then it was sort of social and newspapers and all that kind of thing. So yeah, really
very cool,
fantastic.
And Toby, how about you?
Yeah, so I was supporting Land Rover Experience at the time, and supporting Jeremy's team really, and the sort of wider expedition team. And I had the immense privilege to do the entire expedition. Started in Solihull at the Land Rover factory, and ended in Beijing. I think I was the only person to do the whole thing, actually, which was, as I say, a huge privilege. I'm the guy who got lucky and probably had the availability, I guess, at the time to be able to do it.
Oh, that's awesome. So before we start talking about, the expedition itself, let's talk a little bit about the cars that you guys took. So what Land Rover vehicle, 10 years ago, obviously that isn't the brand new ultra luxury edition astronaut Range Rover, but what car were you guys in at the time?
There's probably one for Toby. He's the expert on Land Rovers.
Well, it was all about discovery. Journey of Discovery was the name, and it was celebrating the production of the 1 millionth Land Rover Discovery to come off the line. So those were the cars that we drove. We had 4 of them, all consecutive vehicles, produced all identical, and they were the 5-litre naturally aspirated Discovery 4 generation. Absolutely. Brilliant car to do it in at the time.
And that was the LR4 here, obviously, in the United States, the Discovery 4. And after that, then they sort of stopped putting a number next to Discovery, and it has just been sort of Discovery ever since.
Were these specially prepared vehicles, or were these relatively stock cars?
Relatively stock. There was a little bit of preparation for the expedition. So we had the discrete winches fitted to the front, so the ones that sit behind the front number plate and are in bed. Great, really nice discrete. Doesn't sort of take anything away from the looks of the car, but you've still got the full worn winch, full pulling power. We had Duratrack tyres, all-terrain tyres on them, roof racks. But that was about it, to be honest. There wasn't a huge amount of there was nothing mechanically different to the cars. They were stock Discoveries, and which was all you need, really.
Do they have a special paint scheme or livery, I'm assuming, for the sides of the vehicles?
We had a livery, didn't we? So they were white body paint, and then with a specially designed Journey of Discovery livery on the side, which was quite cool, actually. It was sort of representative of the journey we were taking. We had a sort of artist's impression of the map on the back windows, didn't we? Which used to get kind of covered in dust and mud and everything else. And it sort of had this wiggly line going through it. And quite often we'd be somewhere that wasn't on this line, and locals would come up to us and go, you're not here, which I remember.
You're lost, according to this map on your car.
Well,
according to that window.
Exactly. Thankfully, they got covered in mud a lot. But in fact, we were about 3 or 4 days out of Beijing at the very end, and they just looked epic. They were just probably probably a quarter of an inch thick in mud, and then we had the most amazing downpour, and it washed them virtually clean, which was very disappointing. But also covered up the slightly inaccurate map, so nobody could point that we weren't at the right place.
So Land Rover had said to us, hadn't they, don't clean the cars. We want them to arrive, in Beijing, covered in everything. And I remember we were quite frustrated at how clean they stayed, because you'd hit every weather, every climate along the way. And it probably wasn't till about Ukraine, actually, that they started to get, despite having done a load of off-road, and we'd been up in the Alps and we'd done all sorts, that they started to look authentic and wear the mileage, that we'd accumulating.
So let's a great segue into the let's talk a little bit about sort of going into the Ukraine. Obviously, this was some time ago. This was before even the previous occupation and the annexation of Crimea and all of that. This was right before that, probably at one of the more peaceful times in the Ukraine's history. So talk to me a little bit about rolling into the country. And what did you expect from? Because I think a lot of people don't really have a good sense of the Ukraine, having not been a particularly well-traveled part of the world. What was your expectation going into the Ukraine? What did you think that part of the world would be like?
Well, I don't think anybody on the trip had been there before, from memory. I think we were all first-timers, and it's like when you fly somewhere, you go from your home country into somewhere potentially completely different. But when you travel over land, of course, especially going through Europe, where you're not, you're traveling through different cultures and different languages and everything else. So it was more of an evolution, because we went, for instance, from the Geneva Motor Show, and we went through Italy and went through Austria, went through Hungary, and then crossed from Hungary into Ukraine. And there was a definite difference between Hungary and Ukraine. You know, the roads were worse, and it was all a bit more kind of take it or leave it. The driving conditions were tougher. I think it was the first time the vehicles really had any kind of workout where they weren't deliberately taken off road to do anything. And I remember thinking, wow, this is interesting. And I think it took a day or so to kind of acclimatize to the different conditions. But the one thing I think jumped out for me, and I'm not sure about what the other guys think, is that immediately we were made to feel really welcome. I think the one exception was a slightly drunken policeman at some point who pulled us over and clearly needed his salary topping up. But apart from that, everybody else we met in Ukraine was so warm, and wanted to know where we were going. We went to the most amazing places, which we can detail if you like a little bit later. But generally, it was like, this is a real pleasant surprise, because being Europeans, all right, we might have left the EU, but Brits are still Europeans.
Formerly Europeans, yeah.
Formerly European. It shouldn't have felt that different, but it did. It kind of looked familiar, but it felt so. It was definitely a transition from Western Europe to Eastern Europe. But no, it was just suddenly we felt like we were in a really cool place.
And Anthony, what sort of struck you visually about the difference between leaving what is in Hungary, obviously very modern European country, Budapest, and things very, very modern European cities, into sort of entering what I imagine on the Hungarian border is a relatively rural part of the Ukraine. What struck you visually about that?
Yeah, I mean, as Jeremy already said, the roads weren't as good. But still fine, But actually, the one thing that struck me was the signs. They were very, the sort of post-Soviet kind of, built to last, very sort of cubic kind of, all of that sort of stuff going on. I mean, one of the pictures in the Land Rover book and I took, was one of the signs that we kind of passed, and it. It's a sign that you just wouldn't see anywhere else in the world. It was so unique. We're going east. We've left Western Europe and we're going east. And sort of, MiG planes suspended in off the signs and all this sort of stuff. So, and all of this stuff was a bit dusty. It's sort of been left. I mean, I've done various places in Eastern Europe. In Lithuania, places like Stalinworld in Lithuania, where all the old iconography has been left, and this had that feel of that it obviously had been there back in the sort of Soviet days, but they're moving on. They're sort of embracing kind of Europe, and this stuff is just sort of in amongst all the other signs. But occasionally you get this really kind of striking sort of Soviet iconography. But no, reiterate, Jeremy, incredible, friendly, warm, welcoming people. And I mean, I think, just looking at the dates, we stayed there a week, or over a week. We did a lot of it. I'd actually been, so Jeremy was incorrect. I was probably the only person that had been to the Ukraine before, because I'd been to, we'll come on to it later, Chernobyl, 10 years earlier. So I'd done a trip with a magazine 10 years earlier. So I'd risked myself 10 years before at that place.
Well, Toby, maybe we can talk a little bit about the route that you guys took generally, and then we can sort of deep dive into some of those. Certainly, we got to talk about Chernobyl. That's one of Ike's favorite topics, as being a hobbyist nuclear physicist, in the spare time. But
fascinating place.
So let's talk about the route. Where obviously entered through Hungary after the sort of western part of Europe, and then what was the ultimate route and exit point to head on, I imagine, through Russia, as there's not much else to the east but Russia. What was the route?
Yeah, so it was, as you say, entered in through Hungary, first of all, and what Jeremy said actually was exactly right about suddenly we noticed that step change in all sorts of things, but one of which was the road conditions, and it was the start of probably a steady kind of decline in terms of what you're used to seeing on European roads and roads that regions that have a lot of investment in that sort of infrastructure. And I remember one of the first things actually is we basically went down over a border crossing and then down a big hill was a massive flood. Do you guys remember this? And we sort of took the cars through it, and some amazing pictures that Anthony will have of the cars going through this. And it was the first time I think we'd encountered deep water. And this was just on a road, and it was deserted, no one around, just woodland either side. And that was the sort of the start of some of the things to come, not necessarily for Ukraine, but for the rest of the expedition. But from there, I think I might need the guys to help me with this a bit on route. But I think Lviv was one of the first major stops, which is obviously in the news a lot at the moment. Which was the whole place actually was striking in terms of scenery. And again, it was one of the things we really noticed crossing that border, and everything changed visually.
It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Lviv. It's because it kept switching from Austria to, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yeah.
And we ended up in a 18th century apothecary, which Anthony took some amazing pictures of, wooden thing. Yeah, so Lviv was the first sort of major stop in the west of Ukraine.
Yeah, and from there it was up to Kyiv first. Am I getting this right? I probably should have checked.
Yeah, so we went across to Kyiv, which is the capital, and apparently Kyiv is the Ukrainian pronunciation. Kiev, that's right, as in the chicken, is the Russian pronunciation,
which is what we were calling it at the time, wasn't it? It was Kiev.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. Interesting. Right.
Now, just for a little perspective, this is around what 2011, something like that.
10 years ago, it was 2012.
Yeah. So that's only what 20 years after Ukrainian independence from the Soviets. Is that right? So this is like relatively fresh for them, right? So the buildup of their infrastructure and that stuff is not complete, and obviously now it's much diminished, after this invasion. But 20 years. So this is a place that's 20 years from Russian occupation.
It was 92. So 92 was the fall of the Soviet Union, and 2002, 2012. So 20 years almost exactly. Do you want to continue the route, Toby, or do you want?
And then so if you, day or two in Kyiv, wasn't it? And I remember the highlights there. We Independence Square. We parked the cars up there, didn't we, for a shoot? Which again, is a familiar sounding place all of a sudden from what we see in the news and so on. And even since then, the protests and the issues they had in 2014 and so on. It was one of the places that was on the top of the kind of news agenda. From there we went up to Chernobyl, wasn't it? Which was a fair way out up towards the Belarusian border. Again, broadly in the middle of nowhere. You go through a lot of fairly desolate countryside, and it's all quite dense woodland. Quite a wet place, Ukraine. A lot of water, and you're following the major sort of river route up towards Chernobyl, which was just almost indescribable, really, as a place. As you say, Anthony, I remember you telling us at the time. I'd forgotten that until you mentioned it, that you'd been there 10 years earlier and you'd seen the changes of a little bit of it, and it wasn't a huge amount, was it? There were plans to build
the changes, or ironically, the lack of change. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's it. And then so Chernobyl, which we can come back to, and then from there it was shot straight down to Crimea.
We stopped at Odessa briefly. So
Odessa, which was amazing. Odessa was a beautiful place, and I think is a destination, isn't it, for many reasons. And the Potemkin Steppes, Jeremy had managed to secure permission to drive the cars down the Potemkin Steppes, but we decided not to, didn't we? Because again, it was a national monument through fear of causing some damage. We thought that would be not make us friends with the locals in Odessa if we were to damage their.
You can handle a pushchair in a film, but not a land.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
That was
And
Anthony's previous driving experience, before he got in a little bit.
Yeah. And I remember we were looking at the steps, weren't we, and thinking how we can the cars are going to get no problem. We can get the cars down these without any issues whatsoever. But they were it's an ancient monument,
right?
18 something, dislodging one of the
you don't want to.
You don't want to do it. You know.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I think we had a local official there who was very happy for us to do it, but it was like,
of course,
let's not risk it.
Right.
So from there, then to Crimea, and did almost a full loop around the coast in Crimea. And one of the vineyards that we visited, I think there were two on the trip. Maybe there was one in Europe, but there's certainly one in Crimea and one in China, much later on.
Coincidence.
Coincidence, yeah, exactly. Yes, it wasn't, the vineyard tour of the world this time, unfortunately. But yeah, loop around the sort of the lower edge of the Crimean Peninsula, which was amazing scenery. I wasn't expecting it to be have quite as much terrain in there as it did.
Sounds a bit like the Corniche in the south of France, sort of big cliffs and everything else. And also, just to add into what you were saying, we went to Yalta, which was quite famous for the conference with Eisenhower and Churchill and Stalin.
Stalin. That's right.
Churchill quite liked his wine. I'm surprised he went. I don't know whether he liked the wine from Yalta or not. I think we were pretty ambivalent, but.
I think after bottle number 1, I think he would be down for sort of whatever.
I think after about bottle number 5, it tastes quite good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he's that discriminatory after a certain amount. So,
it's an amazing place. It was a beautiful, beautiful vineyard and a huge sort of castle. I seem to remember. They were known for the wine was very sweet, wasn't it? Which isn't necessarily what you
look for. Yeah.
And we bought Jeremy acquired a 1945. Vintage, maybe it wasn't vintage, but it was certainly a 1945 bottle, didn't we, Jeremy? From there, that we
it seemed to acquire that.
Trip. Yeah, somehow the contents of it disappeared somewhere in Uzbekistan.
There's a picture. One of Anthony's lovely pictures. For those of you watching on radio.
Yeah.
Seemed to have hair in that picture. That was weird. I don't know how that happened.
I didn't recognize it.
The contents of that bottle disappeared somewhere in Uzbekistan, I think, which I have absolutely nothing to do with Jeremy.
There's a team still investigating. We're not sure. Hopefully they'll have some follow-up on that soon.
We had no punctures, by the way, by this point.
Is that true?
Not. You mentioned Uzbekistan. I think we had like 10, 20 punctures in Uzbekistan. But up to this point, I don't think anything had gone wrong with the cars at all. I think they were absolutely
bomb-proof.
Bomb-proof.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Yeah, and I remember at the time Land Rover had only recently started using that tyre.
I see. Okay.
The Duratrack, and they were very interested in how we were. So we were reporting back on tyre condition, and it was sort of, hey, nothing to tell. Tyres are good, and that to the point where we were. It was actually pothole damage was the thing, but it was like pothole damage that no tyre is going to cope with, particularly on a normal. Probably 19-inch rim, I think we had.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that was later on when we started, and the cars were heavily loaded as well. So it was a big ask.
Pretty good challenge for them.
Actually, people might find that interesting. I mean, you were talking about the kit that there was, actually fitted to the car, but we had a lot of stuff in there. I mean, for instance, we had our own health and safety guy that came with us, and one of the things that we took was the Jaws of Life with us.
Oh my goodness! Oh wow!
Yeah, no, we were seriously kitted out, and in fact we used them. Thankfully not.
I was going to say recreationally, or
we got more wine. Yes, maybe Anthony can show us how many fingers he's missing.
After that bottle of 1945 wine,
Yalta wine and Jaws of Life don't go well together.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, we came across an accident in Kyrgyzstan, which is the last place before crossing into China, and it was a pretty nasty accident, and used them to get the guy out of the car, and So there we go. But no, we had a lot of kit, and Anthony, and the camera guys and everything else. There was we managed to find room for the wine though somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, that's a priority. Yeah, there's some of the important bits had to be moved up to the roof in order to make room for the wine inside. So, but that's fine. Yeah, that's the medical kits and things.
I think we stopped off at Red Bull in Switzerland as well, and got a load of Red Bulls as well.
Oh my goodness!
We did, in Austria.
Yeah, and didn't sleep then straight through to China. So yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They said they'd give us a little bit. If we asked for a bit for the journey, we had a contact over there, and
I'm sure
it was pretty much a carload that turned up. And we were like, well, let's take it with us. It was very generous.
Any experience I've ever had with the Red Bull folks, they are. That stuff is free flowing in a way that is slightly upsetting. I had an opportunity to spend some time with the Mercedes folks, and they strictly Monster Energy drink. They do not, as you can imagine, they do not care for the Red Bull. That is a constant thorn in their side, especially after last year's Formula One. They are not, no Red Bull allowed anywhere near those guys. So, yeah.
Now, you guys talked a little bit about the Ukrainians being, welcoming and warm. What sort of reaction did you get, bringing all these vehicles there? Were they interested in them? Did they care about them? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think people were really interested, weren't they?
Yeah, I think. Well, as I said, we apart from getting pulled over at one point by a policeman who clearly needed to top up his mortgage kitty or something. But
can you blame him? There's five brand new Land Rovers there.
Exactly. Our Russian speaking guide. Who I'm convinced to this day had an alter ego of being a British spy in Moscow. Absolutely, the worst dressed man in history, and I think he met his match in the.
I feel better now. You've met me, and you said that, so I feel better about it.
Yeah. It's a close race, though. Yeah.
Oh. But. People were interested. Toby was saying, we parked up in Independence Square. When we took the car, we'll go maybe into Chernobyl in detail, but we got permission to take the cars into Chernobyl, and in fact, in the end we used a local Land Rover Ukraine vehicle to go in there because quite rightly the mechanics, the Land Rover Experience guys that were with us were a little reticent to be diving underneath a car that had been driving over radiated ground. So actually, when we went into Chernobyl itself, we used another Discovery that was supplied locally just for the 5-10 miles to go in there and back out again. But everywhere we went, people, because if you look at any of Anthony's pictures, and I'm sure he'll share them with you to maybe put on your social media or whatever, they really stand out. It's a bit like driving a 3-ton Formula One car through the through the streets with all the logos on and roof racks.
You don't see a lot of heavily sponsored vehicles in the middle of middle Ukraine. Yeah, no.
With UK
exactly.
plates,
and UK license plates and all that kind of thing. But I think also the history that Ike was talking about is very important. Is that the country had only been 20 years independent in this particular period of its history, and very independent people, and we're seeing that with what's going on at the moment. They are Ukrainian, and of course, there are lots of relations with all sorts of other countries around there, but they're fiercely independent and very proud, and they really wanted to share, their lives, their food, their wine. They wanted us to know about their way of life, and they were very much, and still are, want to be seen as Ukrainians, and so, and we asked some, they wanted us or happy for us to drive down the Potemkin stairs in Odessa. They allowed us to drive into a former nuclear submarine base in Balaclava in Crimea. Pretty well everything that and it was such a good idea that Top Gear then followed that and did that themselves a couple of years later. So, there we go. For me, of the whole trip, and I was fortunate, I've been everywhere else on the journey previously, with one exception, it was the highlight for me. It really was and that was because it was unexpected. You ended up somewhere where you think, oh, it'll just be a week, nothing exciting, and it was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So that's why this 10-year anniversary is so important, I think, certainly to me, and I'm sure to the guys, that we're looking at the TV and going,
yeah,
we've been there, and
we've met these people, sure,
we've met these people, and they are a wonderful country and wonderful people. So I think I'm certainly, speak for myself, proud and privileged to have spent so much time there with them, and allowed got their hospitality, so much.
Yeah, no, it is an amazing thing to see what we're seeing right now in what is a peaceful and beautiful country. To have something like this is really a shame. It's really tough to sort of reckon how that is possible in the modern the modern age. So let's talk a little bit about some of those places, dive a little deeper. If you had to sort of pick one city that was a real highlight, maybe for each of you, and if you all pick different ones, then this will work really well. Jeremy, what was the sort of highlight city for you? What was one that really surprised you or stood out for you?
It's a tough call, because Anthony had told us all about his previous trip to Chernobyl, and I you've asked me first, so I have to say that was the highlight for me, because having grown up, I was in my 20s when it happened. And there was rumor that it had happened, and suddenly the Scandinavians were going, hang on, our Geiger counters have gone off the scale,
right?
And even here, the wind blew due north. So this is why Belarus, which is the northern neighbour, got so much of the radiation so quickly, and then it blew up towards Scandinavia. So in the UK, we got some of it, but not so much. It was pretty weak. But even to the point where people say, well, you can't eat the sheep now. You can't eat the cows. They all have eaten the grass that's, that's radiated. So it was a thing, as somebody growing up during that period, it was real. And yes, of course, you've seen images and everything else. But when you actually go in there, and it wasn't so much seeing the reactor and the fact, it's in this giant.
Yeah. Was the new sarcophagus? Yeah. Was the new sarcophagus there yet? That was before that had been built.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that was an interesting thing for me. So 10 years earlier, there was all this talk about this new sarcophagus, and it was all European money. And then 10 years later, they told everybody else the same story, that there's going to be this new, just this constant, like there's going to be this new thing, which 2017, I think eventually they got.
It is finally in place now, but unfortunately.
So when I went in 2002, one of the interesting things was one of the safety guys from Chernobyl. Yeah. And the thing that always stays with me, and he said, Chernobyl will be the next Chernobyl, as in this concrete thing is cracking.
Right.
And it's going to, fall down, and it's going to let it all out again.
Right,
And it's just like, oh, okay. It's a bit of a time bomb then, is it?
Right. And there's some amazing documentary work that's been done about this new generation sarcophagus. But even then, they have said this is a temporary thing, that nothing can be built over top of this thing to ever really contain it. This is a long-term, obviously, project to clean. Yeah, what an amazing thing to be there. We shot Chernobyl, the television show that we did for HBO. That was shot in another town that was identical to Chernobyl. Apparently, these pattern towns exist all over that part of the Ukraine. And, although some of it was shot in and around the actual Chernobyl, most of it was in this town not that far away that is identical. Buildings are in the same places, the reactors in the same, everything.
That was incredible. I saw it. It was a fantastic program. And also, funnily enough, I actually knew one of the guys in it, Donald. And he lives in the village here. And I said to him that I'd been to Chernobyl, and he's like, you bloody idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the prevailing notion. Is it's not a good place to spend a lot of time. So Anthony, what was one of the cities that you really keyed in on, that you thought was particularly remarkable?
Well, I mean, for me, obviously Chernobyl's gone, but it actually Balaclava, Sevastopol, that Crimean coast was incredible. Obviously, incredibly beautiful,
Right.
Clear water, and almost a kind of holiday. It is the Black Sea resort, holiday resort.
Yeah.
But just going into this this nuclear submarine base, the Cold War submarine base that was dug into the side of a mountain. And we drove in with the car. We opened
very
the glass
007,
doors.
very
Completely.
James Bond.
And it wasn't as if they tidied the place up that much. I mean, there was still old missile shells and
Broken down
doors
submarines.
I mean, there was bits of submarine. I mean, there was a sort of model of one, but no, it was just. I'll ping you the pictures and you can sort of put them up.
Yeah.
But it was properly James Bond stuff, and for me that was just like, wow, I'm in here. I mean, 20 years earlier, I'd have been strung up for being in it. But,
right? Yeah.
But now we're waltzing around, and
Anthony's pictures are just sensational from that. I mean, I think the one thing that they explained, because you think, well, that they came in underwater. So if this mountain, literally the submarines came into the like their pens, the canals, if you like, under the mountain. They came in underwater and then popped up.
Right.
And so they couldn't be sort of spotted.
And did they make was that a tunnel that was dug under the mountain or were those were naturally occurring and they just sort of oh wow, that's amazing.
And it was it was like an arch. So an arc, so one in one side, and then it went under the mountain, literally a mountain, and then popped out the other side. I mean, there's a map that shows you, So basically, if they're in the middle of that, nothing's getting them. So
right,
made sense.
Yeah, wow, amazing. And Toby, what about you? The good ones are all taken now. That's not true, I'm sure. But what was your favorite?
I would have agreed with Anthony definitely on Simferopol and Sevastopol and the sub base. Just outrageous that we're allowed to go in there and agree the images from there are something else. But very close second for me actually was Odessa. I mean, again, what a place! Just a beautiful city, and for me that's the one that stands out in terms of how the people reacted to us and how they treated us. I think we did a little sort of press conference down there as well, a bit of press junket, and people were just really wanted to know more about who we were, what we were doing, and so on, which was amazing. And we'd watched the clips of I think it's Battleship Potemkin, the film that features the steps from a really, really early film. And we were watching that on phones and so on in the sort of way in and going, wow, this is amazing, we're going there. And you go and see the steps and it's exactly like that. It's of course it was amazing.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And what about Land Rovers in general? Did you guys see, obviously being an ex-Soviet country, probably not as much as you would see in other parts of Europe, but did you see any series Land Rovers? Were there folks driving the more modern cars? Obviously not the richest country, so probably not a lot of Range Rovers, but were the more utility-oriented Land Rovers? Did you see them around?
There were a few actually. I mean, we did hook up with the local regional Land Rover markets as we met the guys from Land Rover Ukraine, and we went to a dealership there and so on. So we saw the local cars there. We saw one or two. I'm sure Jeremy and Nancy, didn't we? We saw a guy in a fairly tricked up 90. It was by one of those. We hadn't been in the country very long. We just crossed the border, and Anthony mentioned one of the monuments that was a MiG jet on a sort of metal structure. We were parked up there taking some photos and kind of chilling out, and this chap drove past and did a U-turn and came back to us, and we were chatting to him for a bit, and kind of we had a translator with us, and he may have spoken, I can't quite remember, but having a look around, and he was like blown away, an enthusiast, and I remember Jeremy telling him about his NAS Spec 90 and so on. It was a similar sort of thing he was driving, and that was pretty cool. And one or two others. I can't remember any series vehicles in Ukraine, but they'll be there.
I don't remember any at all. No, I mean, I do remember the dealer in Kyiv though telling us about how he tended to get payment for vehicles, and you'd be surprised they were selling quite a lot of Range Rovers.
Oh yeah.
The cash is very popular.
I imagine.
Bags of it. People literally come with bags of cash to buy Range Rovers. And didn't one of the Klitschko brothers, weren't they involved with? So the two. One of the Klitschkos is a boxer, and he's obviously now on the TV.
Both of them, I think, are boxers. Yeah,
I think there was a connection there with them and Land Rover in Ukraine. But there weren't many. That's for sure.
There
weren't many.
Yeah, not a lot. I imagine plenty of Soviet era trucks and things like that. Yeah, or work vehicles.
Yeah,
very cool.
In fact, in Russia, after we left Ukraine, we ended up in this bizarre place where this guy had this collection of old Soviet trucks parked in a field.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah,
that was a bit odd, but
Lada Niva with a massive engine with sort of big wheels zooming around as well.
Lada Nivas, those are fascinating cars. Those are kind of like the Eastern European Fiat Panda, right? They're kind of like a four-wheel drive compact car. Is that right?
But this thing just flew over the snow because it was quite light, big fat wheels, and it was just flying,
Yeah.
It was a local 4x4 club, wasn't it? That we,
that's right. Yeah.
I think the guy. Was it the guy who had the collection and invited? I'm not sure. I remember we weren't necessarily expecting to see them, but it was really cool. And it was all of that, quite heavily modified sort of Soviet era 4x4s, and they went and did what all 4x4 clubs do. They go, drive off road and explore. And to get to this field where this was in Russia rather than Ukraine, but only just over the border, and to get to this field where this weird kind of car collection was, it was a pretty heavy game. It was snow, it was deep, and there was this sort of ditch you had to cross, and it took us actually in the heavily laden Discoveries a few attempts. No tracks, no nothing. We're just forging our way through the snow. And these guys were they let us go first, and they were all queuing up behind us. And then we got through eventually, kind of carried on, and they were flying past us and doing donuts in this field we were crossing next to us. Fucking snow.
They didn't have any wine in the back. That was the difference. They weren't.
They weren't very. A little more ginger to protect the wine. Yeah.
There was a very cool truck though that this guy had there, or was that somewhere else? Where he had a sauna. It was an old Soviet army truck. And he had a sauna fitted in the back of it.
A ZIL truck.
Did you partake in the?
Did you partake in the sauna?
One of the guys did. Yeah, one of the guys did. But we sent Warren in, I think, to the truck sauna.
Wow.
The mobile sauna.
He whipped by birches, wasn't he?
He got whipped by birch branches. Yeah.
Oh,
they were like, "You got the jaws of life. We got." We got mobile
saunas here. We're actually working to fit a sauna into the Pangolin 4x4 up there in Oregon right now. It's it's an all-new sauna and 4x4 service. So it's instead of a traditional client waiting room, the all-new sauna. So it's very popular.
Steven demanded it.
I did, yeah. That's the only way that I'll have any work done on my cars is if there's a nude sauna available in the area. So, guys, just to sort of wrap up before the round robin lightning round, which is just going to be an epic undertaking here that Ike will partake here momentarily. Just sort of final thoughts, if I could, Jeremy, maybe starting with you on your time there, and just to sort of wrap up our conversation on your time in the Ukraine.
Well, after we were in the Crimea, we then headed straight north up to Moscow, and genuinely, I was very sad to leave. It was Russia is a very different place. Doesn't have the softness, doesn't have the the same feel that Ukrainians did, and so they really took us under their wing and made us feel very, very welcome there. And it was always a little bit of a kind of looking over the shoulder, I think, for a few days after we've been there. So an absolute pleasure and an honour to have been there at such a positive time in their history. And like you said at the top of the show, I hope it's not too long before they get some peace back.
Yeah, Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, obviously reiterate the peacefulness to return, and for people to enjoy it. I mean, to enjoy it with freedoms to be able to go to, you know, the various ports and things, and just enjoy the countryside, the people. I mean, Kiev. I've been to Kiev quite a few times. Magazines and things. It became quite a popular destination for, you know, long weekends, short breaks. And, you know, I want that to happen again. I mean, it's close. It's you jump on the plane and enjoy the place, and just embrace it as one of our European friends. And so for me, I want it back.
Yeah. And Toby, wrapping up, how about you?
Yeah, it's very similar sentiment to the guys, really. I mean, what my lasting memory of Ukraine is what a beautiful country, beautiful scenery, and it's hard to imagine, you know, what it must be like over there now. But love to go back, but it's again hard to imagine when and how that may happen. But it's echoing that sentiment from the guys. Really hope things can improve back to the Ukraine that we saw at some stage.
Yeah, well, and we do as well, and hope that that there's a resolution and then there's peace in that region again very soon. So to end on a lighter note, Ike, we're going to try a lightning round, but with so many people, this is a world record-setting number of people on Her Majesty's Underpowered Hour. So what we're going to try is a round-robin format where Ike will ask the question, and then Jeremy, Anthony, and Toby, in that order, will answer as quickly as possible to try and be as true to the lightning round format as possible. So Jeremy knows a little bit what's coming. Anthony and Toby, I apologize in advance. So Ike, take it away.
All right, everybody. For those of you that haven't done this or not familiar, this is a few quick questions and quick answers about Land Rovers and your particular preferences. So, without much further ado, let's get started. Are you guys ready?
We're ready. I'm ready.
All right. Ready. Okay, first one's up. Petrol or diesel?
Diesel.
Hybrid.
Okay.
Petrol.
All right. Soft top or hard top?
Soft top.
Anthony? Okay.
Soft top for me.
Soft top wins. All right. Manual or automatic transmission?
Manual.
Yeah, manual for Land Rover, yeah.
Yeah, manual. That depends what it is, but manual.
Unanimous. Perfect. Leaves or coil springs?
Coil.
Yeah, coil for me.
Oh, manual coil sprung. Bronze green or Tangier's orange?
Tangier's orange.
The green, yeah. Classic green.
The green, classic. Toby?
Hard. Bronze green.
Perfect. I like it. And the best way to remove gear oil from your underwear?
Get a new pair.
Leave it on.
Wear it. He likes it. And Toby?
Fire.
Perfect. Well done, guys.
Coincidentally, yeah, those are the top three answers for that as well.
I think so.
So you've covered the spread. Well, guys, hey, thank you again for the time. Thank you for sharing your experience there, and looking very forward to having you all on the show again sometime in the future. Maybe we'll cover the rest of the journey at some point before too long. And again, our thoughts are with the folks in Ukraine, and hopefully we can all start visiting and spending some time there again very soon. So again, Jeremy, Anthony, Toby, thank you again for your time. We genuinely appreciate it, and we'll hopefully chat with you again very soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, what a fantastic gang those guys are. As always, Jeremy's attention to detail and ability to recall, the sort of neat things, and what a joy to chat with Anthony and with Toby as well, and get their sort of insight into a country that just sounds really breathtaking, really amazing, and a really wonderful place to hopefully see back in a state of peace as soon as possible.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate. I got to learn a lot about a place that I haven't got to visit, and the only thing I knew about the Ukraine previous to this was that they big exporter of sunflower seeds. So you see these pictures of the rural areas of Ukraine and these incredibly gorgeous fields of sunflowers. Really amazing. That's all I really knew about the Ukraine. So it was really neat to talk to some people that had been there and spent some time and, sort of celebrate this place that is experiencing so much hardship right now.
Yeah. And I had known a little bit about it because of our work on Chernobyl and but hadn't had an opportunity to actually visit. And what a remarkable place. So as part of our effort to stand with and to do our part to support the folks in the Ukraine, we are working with the International Rescue Committee, and we'll be donating all of the proceeds of this month's worth of Underpowered Hour shows. So that's all the advertisement that you hear on the show, etc. We're going to donate that to the International Rescue Committee that is doing some great work there, providing families with temporary shelter, with emergency
support.
Kits,
Absolutely,
etc. Yeah, for refugees, both inside the country and outside, and they also do some great work with Afghan, Syrian, and Yemen refugees as well. And so I encourage you, if you don't want to work with the International Rescue Committee, that's fine, but to find a charity that you trust to get that help to those folks. And that's it for this week, Ike. It's been a pleasure as always, and it was fantastic to chat with those gentlemen and learn more. And we'll be back next week with another one.
All right, Stephen, I'm looking forward to it. See you on the trail.